In the mid-90s, Capcom took the stats, the shops, and the inventory management of the tabletop world and fused it together with the mechanics of an arcade beat-em-up. They were looking to adapt the grandfather of all role-playing games, and the result was the first officially licensed arcade game to bear the Dungeons & Dragons name. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Arcade Economy, the series where we take a look at old arcade classics to determine just how much they would have cost to beat at the time of their release. In our last episode, we took a look at how much it costs to get through 100 levels of the Dungeon Crawler Gauntlet. Today, we're heading to Mystara to look at the first of two D&D arcade games, Tower of Doom. Was this game a critical hit, faithfully adapted to the D&D experience, or was it designed to team wipe your party and loot your gold? As always, we're gonna find out.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Now, real quick, before I get started, while I do respect Dungeons and Dragons, I'm not someone who plays D&D, so I am not claiming to be an expert. I do have a bunch of friends who are very much into D&D. So with that being said, I know a lot of people kind of hold this close to their heart. So if I mispronounce anything, just know that I tried to research this as best as I could. And I'm just someone who's here to play games and give you my analysis on it, and this has been a highly requested game. With that being said, let's get into the development of Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom. By the early 90s, Capcom was pumping out hits left and right. Street Fighter II had completely set the stage for fighting games, making the developer the king of the genre. Around this time, they began to push the limits of beat-em-up games by adding experimental new gameplay mechanics. Capcom also showed pretty significant interest in fantasy-themed games with the releases of Willow in 1989, Magic Sword in 1990, and The King of Dragons and Knights of the Round releasing only months apart in 1991. Different mechanics from these games would go on to be adapted in some form or another for what would eventually become Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom. Adapting American IPs into arcade games had proven to be a recipe for success in the 80s and 90s, and Capcom had its sights on Dungeons & Dragons, one IP that everyone was familiar with, but had yet to make its way into the arcade officially. At the time, D&D had a large number of games on home computers, and was just starting to be adapted as console entries. Capcom was able to acquire the D&D license from TSR under the condition that they port the Eye of the Beholder computer game to the SNES. With the license in hand, Capcom Japan began creating the concept for a D&D arcade game, but were having a hard time aligning with TSR on a vision. The Japanese devs weren't familiar with the tabletop's rules and lore, and TSR didn't want their IP represented as just some run-of-the-mill arcade beat-em-up, leading to a disconnect between the parties. Capcom's US division stepped in and enlisted one of their employees, an avid D&D player, Alex Jimenez, to assist in adapting the game and act as the translator between the two organizations. It was decided to write a solid D&D story first, and then build out the game around that. The team chose the Mystara campaign as the setting, and looked at Sega's Golden Axe as a starting point for gameplay. Jimenez had to steer the team towards actual D&D mechanics, without losing the arcade pacing. Decisions were made to move from 2 buttons to 4 buttons to account for the game's inventory system. A branching narrative where players make their own decisions was needed to truly lock down the D&D feel. Jimenez has gone on record mentioning the Laserdisc game Thayer's Quest as the inspiration for these mechanics. There were also major differences in opinion for what the game would look like, with Capcom wanting to make it more anime style similar to Record of Lodoss War, and TSR naturally was pushing for more of a Western style. Jimenez was able to diplomatically resolve some of the tension between the parties with an art style that landed somewhere in the middle. After a couple of years in production, Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom launched in the arcades in early 1994. D&D was no stranger to video games, having a long list of computer games being released over the course of the past couple decades. Yes, you heard that correctly. Decades. The first D&D game was released way back in 1975 and is credited as the first game to introduce bosses. Tower of Doom, however, was the first arcade D&D release and would see a direct sequel 2 years later in 1996 with Dungeons & Dragons Shadow over Mystara. The game would build upon the mechanics set up in Tower of Doom and is considered by many to be one of the greatest arcade beat-em-ups ever made. Spoiler alert, you bet your ass I'm going to be covering this sometime in the future. The two games would be packaged up in a collection under the name Dungeons & Dragons Chronicles of Mystara and ported exclusively to the Sega Saturn in 1999. The collection would make its way to online storefronts everywhere in 2013 and is still available on Steam and the Microsoft Store. While no other direct sequels were made, Dungeons & Dragons games continue to release to this day and include a number of popular titles, most of which are set in the Forgotten Realms campaign. These include franchises like Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, and Neverwinter Nights. Tower of Doom takes place in the Mystara campaign. Monsters are increasingly attacking the inhabitants of the Republic of Darken, suggesting an organized effort. This unusual convergence, with the creatures prioritizing attacks on the citizens rather than fighting one another, has led many to believe that a single powerful entity is manipulating events from behind the scenes. 4 heroes, a fighter, an elf, a cleric, and a dwarf, rise to the occasion to protect the people of Darken and investigate the coordinated attacks. Deep into the game, it is later revealed that the Arch-Lich Demos is the villain behind the attack. The 4 heroes must travel to his Tower of Doom to confront him and free Darken from his onslaught. Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom may look like a simple beat-em-up on its surface, but there is a lot of depth and nuance in this game. Maybe even the most we've seen in this series so far, to be honest. As mentioned before, the game uses a 4-button layout, which was a lot for a beat-em-up. These buttons include attack, jump, select item, and use item. The game rewards being patient, so your smartest play is to learn the defensive mechanics. And let me tell you, they're not really intuitive for new players. Holding attack and back will cause your character to block, and since many enemies have a longer reach than you, it's something you'll want to get used to. Holding down and jump causes your character to duck, which dodges high attacks. You can slide by pushing jump twice once in a duck. As I mentioned, these weren't very intuitive, and I had to look up how to do these after my first run at the game. I recommend mastering these maneuvers, especially when playing single player. For offensive attacks, you have your typical dash, which happens when pushing forward twice, a slow power attack when pushing forward and attack at the same time, your dash attack, and a sliding attack, which happens when you attack while sliding. Item pickups are scattered throughout each level in the form of XP pickups, throwing weapons and magic rings to add to your inventory, healing potions, treasure and gold, and items that give you stat increases, such as the Gauntlets of Ogre Power.
Gauntlets of Ogre Power. That's what I call 2 Miller Lights.
Between levels, you can trade your gold and valuables for more weapons or a healing potion, the prices of which will increase the further you make it into the game. Weapon pickups include burning oil, which can be laid as a trap, and daggers, hammers, and arrows that can be used as projectiles. Each of the 4 characters has a distinct class that mimics the D&D party dynamic. The fighter and the dwarf are the brawlers, while the cleric and the elf are the magic users. The fighter has the highest HP and best reach with the fastest throwing speed. The dwarf has the fastest attack speed and good vertical reach. He also has a special twirling attack if his inventory is empty. The cleric is a defensive support magic user. He has an infinite use attack that can eliminate undead enemies, and his spells include the following: Hold Person, which is pretty self-explanatory, Striking, which buffs physical damage, Continual Light blinds and stuns enemies in front of him, Cure Serious Wounds heals himself and other party members, and Sticks to Snakes gives him the ability to, well, turn sticks to snakes. He also has the best blocking abilities and is the only character who can block overhead attacks. The elf is an offensive magic user. She has similar reach to the fighter, but lower HP. Her spells include Magic Missile, an auto-homing projectile attack, Fireball, a massive area damage attack, Invisibility, which turns her invisible for a short time, great for repositioning to set up your next attack, Lightning Bolt, a powerful horizontal attack, Polymorph Others, which turns monsters into harmless critters, and 2 high-level screen-clearing spells, Ice Storm and Cloud Kill. Ice Storm freezes, damages, and stuns all enemies, and Cloud Kill fills the room up with poison gas. Honestly, she might be the best character in the game. After you complete each level, your character will level up. But this is seen as more of a cosmetic, as XP is only used for your overall score, Still, with each passing level, your attacks will get stronger. The enemy variety is okay. You face a lot of the same characters over and over again, but the game does do a good job of mixing them up. Enemies include a number of different humanoid, animal, and undead types, such as gnolls, skeletons, and the hardest enemy of all, this fucking scorpion. This your magic missile, the scorpion. Oh my god, he's still alive.
Missed.
The attention to detail in this game is incredibly impressive for its time. For example, some enemies are immune to certain attacks, so if you use Cloud Kill, the attack with all the poison gas, it doesn't affect skeletons because, well, they don't have lungs. Or if you use any fire-based attacks, it doesn't affect the Hellhounds because they breathe fire. I really appreciate the thought that was put into this game and the attention to detail that wasn't really always present with a lot of other arcade games for the time. The game's level design features a ton of hidden rooms and branching paths. Many stages offer players a choice between routes before progressing on to the next level. Do you want to travel through the mountains or tend to the village? Would you rather take the safe path or fight the dragon? Are you sure? Are you sure? It's something that really adds a ton of replay value to the game, making each player want to test out different paths that they didn't take in the prior playthrough. The bosses you encounter depends on the paths you choose, which means you cannot fight every boss in a single playthrough. Sad, I know, but I did multiple playthroughs, so I'm going to be talking about all of them anyway. The first boss you fight is the Ogre Leader. He's slow with a dangerous charge attack. The hardest part about this boss fight is crowd controlling the sheer amount of enemies around him. If you choose to go to Darraken City, you'll come face to face with the Manticore. He's also pretty easy. When he flies in the air, he'll either throw projectile spike attacks at you, so make sure you shield those, or he'll come crashing down at you, which you can slide to avoid. Taking the Fort Kruth path will have you fight the Displacer Beast. He's called that because he can mirror himself. And you can tell which one is the real beast by which one casts a shadow. Make sure to guard his whip tail from a distance and then attack as normal. The Troll Leader is the next boss, and it can only be defeated by fire. I tried to approach it from below and then finish it off with a fire attack, either as Fireball or from your oil. Next up is the Black Dragon, and as you'll notice, it takes up most of the screen. Try approaching it from above and using your slide and jump attacks. You can use magic or a magic item to vanish his acid breath. Hammers also work pretty well against it.
Pretty easy.
Yep, there he is.
Wow, we killed him real quick.
Then there's Shadow Elf.
Do you fools truly believe you have any chance of defeating me, the flamboyant purple man?
He's very fast, but I found most of the elf's magic to work on him.
Lightning bolt!
Oh, damn. Yeah, that fucked his day up.
He was much easier to beat with more than one player. The next two bosses are either the Beholder or the Red Dragon. When fighting the Beholder, try not to stand directly in front of it, as it casts magic in a straight line. Approaching it from above or below and attacking works best. The Red Dragon is the game's super boss.
I ain't afraid of no drip. Never mind. What do you mean we might face it? It was there immediately.
It's widely considered the hardest boss fight in the game, and it won't even have a health gauge for the first half of the fight. You kinda just have to ride it out by avoiding its attacks. Stick to corners and learn its patterns. Once the health gauge does appear, attack a short time after each pattern, or you can just be like me and charge it and be prepared to spend a buttload of quarters.
Oh, I got a magic missile. Fucking eat it.
Nice.
Let's go.
I killed him.
After this, it's on to the Dark Tower. You'll fight the Shadow Elf again, just use the same strategy as last time.
Beat his ass.
Before fighting Archlich Demos, you'll have to fight two mud golems. I found the best way to deal with them is to crouch dash them to get behind them and then attack. When you finally fight Demos, he's not easy. Most magic attacks don't work on him. If you do have Ice Storm, I recommend using that on him. Save up your arrows because they are probably the best way to land attacks on him. And now it's time to uncover just how much I spent to beat Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom. Now for these games, I play them on their default settings, so for Tower of Doom, that meant medium difficulty and each play cost 25 cents. However, since this came out in 1994 and Street Fighter II kind of established that 50-cent play rule, I do think that this game is probably 50 cents in most arcades back when it released. So I did multiple playthroughs of this game, 3 by myself and 1 with Scott, who is the second half of Mass Replay. And I can tell you, there is a significant difference when you are playing this game with more than one person. Let's look at the single player data first, and then we'll look at the 2-player. Now, for the sake of this video, we're going to look at my very first playthrough, which was before I knew any of the defensive moves. I played as the dwarf, and by the end of the game, it cost me $9.50 to beat it. Now, on 50-cent credits, that would factor out to $19 to beat. Adjusting for inflation and spending $9 in 1994 would feel like spending $19.95 today. Spending $19 in 94 would feel like spending $41.11 today. It took me 1 hour and 7 minutes to beat, and at 50-cent plays, that factors out to about 28 cents per minute, which is a little high when we're comparing to other games. For the individual bosses, and this is for the first time that I played this boss in single player mode, I think I'm gonna need a new receipt for this one. I spent $1 on the Ogre Leader, 50 cents on the Manticore, $1 on the Displacer Beast, 50 cents on the Troll Leader, $1 on the Black Dragon, $1 on the Dark Elf First Encounter, $1.50 on the Beholder, $3 on the Red Dragon, $1.50 on the Second Elf Encounter, $1.50 on the Mud Golems, and $3 on Deimos, bringing my boss total to $15.50. Now let's look at the 2-player data with Scott. When playing here, I chose the fighter and Scott chose the elf. Scott and I both completed the game with the same number of coins at $3.50 each, or $7 at 50-cent plays. $3.50 in 1994 would feel like spending $7.76 today, and $7 in 1994 would feel like spending $15.52 today. Like I said, huge difference. That's a $12 difference at 50-cent plays between single-player play and 2-player play. With 2 players, we were also able to beat the game in under an hour with our total play time at 55 minutes and bringing our total cost per minute to 13 cents. It's pretty crazy that the cost per minute more than doubles with just 1 player. Now let's also take into account that the different play styles or choices or paths that you make are also going to factor into your final total. I mean, if you surpass the dragon, you probably will save a bunch of money. But come on, look at this boss fight. Who in their right mind is going to pass this up? With that, now it's time to bust out the Predatory Games scale to determine just how predatory Tower of Doom was at stealing your quarters. We've established that this game is clearly meant to be played with multiple people. Sure, I had a good time playing by myself, but I had a lot more fun playing with a second player. And I'm sure playing with a full party would just be a blast to see everyone working together and using their own unique playstyles and abilities. The game doesn't appear to cheat or input read or have unavoidable damage. There are a lot of bosses that are really tough, like the dragon and like Deimos, but I think with enough practice, you will be able to kind of master them and be able to maybe 1cc this game. I do think it's going to take a lot of practice to get there though, but nothing flagged me that this game has completely unavoidable damage. The learning curve is a little steep, like I said, especially for beginners, newer players who don't know how to do any of the defensive mechanics. I had to look them up, so we need to take that into account as well. The controls and gameplay mechanics do feel a bit stiff and sluggish, even when comparing this game to other beat-em-ups that came out years before this. There are a ton of gold and treasure and weapon pickups, but not really a lot of health, and even when you do get the health potions, they don't really give you that much HP. It is felt like the game needs to have the cleric there to heal its party, and when he's not there, you're kind of shit out of luck. And while the game does have certain items that give you stat increases, they are very few and far between. But despite all of that, I was very impressed with this game. I never played this when this was out in the arcade. It kind of flew under my radar, so this was really my first experience playing Tower of Doom. The nuances, like the way that certain enemies were immune to certain spells, and the way that all of these characters played completely different and unique to one another and kind of forces you to work together was a really nice touch. And it reminds me of maybe like a modern day MMO or a hero shooter or something like that. And I think the reason why Scott and I did so well when we played together was because he chose a magic user and I chose a brawler, and the comp just worked. I also went back to this game multiple times after I beat it, which is something I don't always do. I mean, partially I did that because I needed to capture more footage, but I actively wanted to explore and feel out the characters and see the different abilities and the different pathways. Really high replay value here. So yeah, the fun factor is really high on this one. And if I were rating it on just my single player experience, it would probably lean more towards a 6 or 7, but the co-op really brought this one down. So I'm giving Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom a 4 out of 10 on the Predatory game scale.
Dungeons and Dragons.
I put the next Arcade Economy to a vote for the Mass Replay community, and the votes are in. So next time on Arcade Economy, I'll be playing through another Capcom fantasy classic, Willow. So be sure to check out that video. If you'd like to support Mass Replay and Arcade Economy, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member or a patron on Patreon. You can get all of my videos early and ad-free, connect with Scott and I in the Discord, and join us for community game nights. And a big special thanks for all of our Patreon producers, Jake Weed, Tanner Trezza, and Pezmage. Your support helps this channel grow. But as always, just you watching this video means a great deal to me, and I thank you so much for your support, so thank you. If you liked this video, you know what to do. Big thumbs up, and hopefully you'll see me on my next video. Thanks for watching.